Hey, it's Derek Depker here, Bestseller Secrets, here with best-selling author of multiple books, but in particular, the one that you might be familiar with, The Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. I'm psyched to be talking to you, Hal, because you've been an inspiration for me, not only with your Miracle Morning process, but also the success that you've had with the Miracle Morning book series. So welcome.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate this. Like I was telling you before we started recording, this is a fun topic for me to dive into. So I'm excited to add as much value as I can.
Yeah, I know you have a lot to share about the book writing process, the book marketing process. You've sold over 1 million books. So a lot of exciting things to get into. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your backstory and how you got to where you're at right now?
Yeah, what led me into writing, period, when I was 20 years old, I was in sales and I was a DJ on the radio. So that was like my dream, was to be a DJ on the radio. I was pursuing that career and started a career in sales. And a year and a half into the career, I was driving home after I gave a speech at one of our divisional sales conferences. And I was in a brand new Ford Mustang. I just bought my first new car. I was kind of on top of the world. Life was great. Got a standing ovation at the speech. It was like everything felt just so perfect. And that night driving home on the freeway, 70 miles an hour, a drunk driver got on the freeway going the wrong direction. And I don't remember the headlights coming at me, but this full-size Chevy truck going, they say 70 to 80 miles an hour, collided head-on into my Ford Mustang. And my Ford Mustang then spun off the drunk driver. The car behind me crashed into my door at 70 miles an hour. And an hour later, I had bled to death. It took the jaws of life, or the fire department with the jaws of life, an hour to cut me out of the car. And when they did, I lost somewhere around half of my blood, and I bled out, and my heart stopped beating for 6 minutes, in a coma for 6 days, and spent that time in the hospital with 2 more flatline twice more, and came out of this coma and was told I would never walk again. And I just had this really positive mindset, which was largely thanks to a mentor I had during that year and a half prior to the accident, who taught me that once something quote unquote bad happens, there's no point in dwelling on it. There's no value in wishing it didn't happen or being upset, angry, sad that it happened. He said, you can't change it. Once it's happened, you can't change it. So he said, the only logical, intelligent choice that you have is to accept life as it happens unconditionally and move forward. And he taught me this thing called the 5-minute rule, which is when things go wrong, set your timer for 5 minutes and give yourself 5 minutes to feel it. Like, bitch, moan, complain, cry, vent, whatever you got to do. But after the 5-minute timer goes up, you go, I can't change it. And although this was a, pretty monumental, challenge or adversity in my life that I would have never imagined, I went, wait a minute, I can't change that I was in a car accident. If I never walk again and the doctors are right, then I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life. I won't be able to change that. What's in my control is my attitude. And I decided I'm going to be the happiest and the most grateful I've ever been while I endure the most difficult time in my life. And I'm going to maintain unwavering faith in the possibility that I will walk again. So I affirmed it every day. I visualized it every day. And the doctors thought I was delusional because I was so positive and so happy. And they called my parents in saying, we think Hal's in denial or delusional, like he's not acting rational. He acts like everything's okay. And what was interesting is it wasn't a front. I wasn't faking it. It was like, yeah, well, I'm in a car. None of the things that have happened can I change. And I even told my dad, I said, if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life and if the doctors are right and I never walk again, I'm betting on that I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to somehow walk again. But if I never do, Dad, I've already decided I will be the happiest and the most grateful person that you've ever seen in a wheelchair, because I'm in a wheelchair either way, And I always, for anybody listening, I would ask you, what is your wheelchair? Like, what's the experience in your life, either present or from the past, or maybe even a fear of the future that causes you emotional pain because you wish it didn't happen. It wasn't fair. You didn't deserve it. It was painful, right? And to realize that, wait a minute, even though that happened, I don't have to let that define my quality of life or my emotional well-being. I can choose to feel however I want to feel, to focus on whatever I want to focus on that serves me, even in the midst of the most challenging, scary, difficult time in my life. And it was really tested again 3 years ago. I was diagnosed with a really rare, aggressive form of cancer. And I was on death's doorway. My heart was failing. My lungs were failing. My kidneys were failing. The car accident happened when I was 20. The cancer was when I was 20 or 37. And I was told that I had a 10 to 30% chance of surviving, which, pretty grim odds. And I'm a dad. I've got a 10-year-old at the time, a 7-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son. And, it's like leaving them is terrifying. But I made the same decision. I go, okay, I have cancer. I can't change that, right? It's almost like drawing a line down the page and going, okay, what are the things I can't change? Let me write those all down. And the only choice that I'm going to make is I'm going to accept all those as they are. I'm not going to resist them. I'm not going to wish they were different. I'm just going to, that's reality. Great. How can I make the best of each of those aspects of reality? And so I decided I'm going to once again maintain unwavering faith that I can beat the cancer and put forth extraordinary effort to do so. And, and just be happy and grateful in the midst of the pain. And I was, and it was painful and it was scary. And, I've been cancer free for a couple of years. And, the last thing I'll share is in between those two, in 2008, when the U.S. economy crashed, that's when I came up with the Miracle Morning. I had hit rock bottom. I was financially devastated. I lost over half of my clients, half of my income. My house was foreclosed on by the bank. I stopped exercising completely because I was just trying to figure out how to make money. And so my body fat percentage tripled. And all these things happened. And a series of events led me to simply go online and Google what are the rituals and routines of the world's most successful people. Because if I do what they do every day, right, then it's only a matter of time before I can kind of figure it out and my become the person, if you will, that will enable me to turn my life around. And I started doing this morning practice every day. It was like the ultimate morning ritual. I was thinking it'd be like 6 to 12 months of the compound effect, like 1% better every day kind of thing. And it was less than 2 months of doing this morning practice that I more than doubled my income. And this was, by the way, when the economy was declining, I doubled my revenue and doubled my income, right? So the economy didn't get better. I didn't change jobs. I was still coaching. That was my primary source of income. And my body fat percentage that had tripled, I decided I wanted to get in the best shape of my life. So I committed to run a 52-mile ultra marathon. And all these things happened within 2 months. And I went to my wife. I go, sweetie, this morning ritual has transformed my life. And in 2 months, I go, it feels like a miracle. And she goes, it's your miracle morning. I go, yeah, I love Miracle Morning. And again, it wasn't a book idea, but I wrote it my schedule every day. I taught it to my coaching clients. And once my coaching clients came back, they said, I'm not a morning person. And then a week or two later, they go, oh my gosh, I implemented all your little tips and strategies. I did the Miracle Morning. I'm happier. I'm having the best sales results. They had these amazing results. And that's when the light bulb went off and I went, wait a minute. If the Miracle Morning changed my life and I was not a morning person, and if it's changing almost all of my clients, there was only one that was resistant and wouldn't do it, but almost every single client of mine, it's working for them and they were all not morning people. I thought this is universal. This could change anyone's life. And I felt a sense of responsibility to write a book about it. And it took 3 years, Miracle Morning published, and I self-published it. It took, I didn't have a big audience. It didn't take off the gate. It wasn't like an overnight success. In fact, it was a year and a half of consistent promotion before it kind of hit that hockey stick and that started to really take off. And now it's translated into 37 languages traditionally. So it's still self-published in the US, but it's traditionally published in 37 other languages. And we just surpassed 2 million copies sold, and it's been really, really surreal. And I'm excited to share what I've done with your audience to help them do the same.
Thank you for sharing all that. And thank you for being an inspiration and a role model through what you've done. Your choice to have that positive attitude, turn your life around after the accident, after the cancer. This is one of the things I talk about, archetypes. You are what I would call the role model archetype. You live it, you apply it to yourself, and through your example, other people see it and you share, hey, this is what worked for me, and now their lives are changed. And it took you being that leader who went first. And there's a couple things that I want to highlight from what you just shared that's so important for everyone listening to this to get. Going back after the accident, it's one thing to logically go, I know I can't change the past, right? Intellectually, okay, I get that. And yet the challenge of being human, it's like, but no, it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't happen to me. This is so unfair. And yet, like Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
The freedom to choose your attitude, which is exactly what you did. You chose your attitude in spite of the circumstances. And what's funny is the doctors go, oh, you're not acting rational. And yet, isn't that the most rational thing, is to accept that you can't change it?
Yeah.
And if you want to have the best chance of healing your body, healing your life, isn't the most rational thing to go in with the best possible attitude? Yeah. And just a quick note on that. This is coming up to me in my intuition. Like, someone might say, yeah, but I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to like think too positive. And especially someone, like you went through cancer, they're like, well, maybe it's better to not get my hopes up so I don't disappoint myself or other people. What would you say to someone who has that belief system?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's a very natural, like you said, intuitive kind of question. Is like, well, but if the odds are really poor, if the odds are 70 to 90% chance that I'm going to die, right? Like, I don't want to get my hopes up, like you said. And I forgot who said this, and I forgot what they said, but the general premise was the idea that there's so much power, and it's so crucial to be able to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time. And so in layman's terms, I would say it's to expect the best and accept the rest. And here's the thing, and I wrote a lot about this. My most recent book that came out last year is called The Miracle Equation, and it was really inspired largely by the cancer journey and how I was able to beat cancer and be actually genuinely happy and grateful, even though I was in the ER at 2 a.m. with, fever and infections and pain and on chemotherapy and all these things. And here's the deal. This is a strategy, right? Like, positive thinking doesn't solve all your problems, but positive thinking puts you in a peak state to solve all your problems. And if you want to increase, and this is about nothing in life is guaranteed. You and I, a bomb could drop on my house or your house right now, and we could, that's it, right? You can't predict the future. You can't predict what's going to happen today on the freeway. None of that is predictable. Nothing is known for certain, right? But if you want to win in life, if you want to create the best possible outcomes in everything you do, that is the way to do it. Step one, accept all things that you cannot change. And that also includes things in the future. So for me, the philosophy evolved to accept life before it happens. So for me, that's why cancer was actually, I wasn't distraught, because I had practiced this for 17 years. And so when I had cancer, I've already decided that anything that ever happens in my life, I've already accepted it. I know that a bunch more adversity is on its way, right? Like, financial stuff's probably going to come up. Who knows what physical stuff's going to come up, right? But you accept the things you can't change because, and here's a really important point. Every negative emotion that you have ever felt, or that I have ever felt, or that we're feeling now, or that we could ever feel in the future, is self-created. It is self-created by our resistance to our reality. In other words, to the degree that we resist reality, which means wishing and wanting that something were different that cannot be different, right? My desk is brown. Damn it, why didn't I get a black one? I should have got a black one. I wish, right? No, it doesn't, nothing doesn't change it, right? I was in a car accident. No, why, right? To the degree that we resist reality, and I'll give you a really simple example, traffic. Most people get frustrated in traffic, which when you really think about it is really ineffective and counterproductive. If you're in the car for 30 minutes and you need to be somewhere in 20, you could spend those 30 minutes frustrated and stressed out, resisting the reality that there's traffic in front of you and that the cars are going too slow. Or you can take a deep breath and go, I can't change it. And I can't change that I'm going to be late. And I can't change the speed of these cars, but I can choose whether or not I'm miserable for the next 30 minutes or whether or not I enjoy every moment, right? And I kind of say, a way to remember that is you can either, in life, in any moment, you can either be stressed out or you can be blissed out, right? And when you resist reality, you're stressed out. When you accept all of life as it is unconditionally, you're blissed out, right? You're at peace. And so that's the first crucial step, is to accept all things as they are so that you don't keep creating emotional pain for yourself, because a lot of us are creating emotional pain over something that happened, whether it was 5 minutes ago, 5 months ago, 5 decades ago. A lot of us are suffering over our childhood, suffering over a past relationship. Every time we think about it with resistance. I wish it didn't happen that way. I wish that person weren't that way. All the pain in our relationships is us resisting the reality of how other people treat us or how other people behave. So this concept it applies to everything, right? All of our pain is self-created by our resistance to reality. And then the other half of it is, okay, all right, I've accepted what I can't change. For me, I was in a car accident and I might never walk again. Worst case scenario, I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life. But guess what? If that comes to pass, I won't resist it then. And when I had cancer, I decided if I end up dying, and I even visualized, not every day, but to just make peace with the worst case scenario. And I think that's a part of it. That's a part of the acceptance, is you accept what's happened, but you then project into the future and go, what's the worst case scenario? And you accept that. And so I go, look, I can't change what I can't change. And I get the last thing I want is to leave my kids without a father, but I will do everything in my power to set them up, even if I'm gone, for success. And so I was really at peace with the worst case scenario. Although, I mean, again, it was scary. So I'm not going to pretend it was like I was immune to it. But the point again is you want to set yourself up for success. And so when you focus on what you want, and I visualize walking again, right? When you focus on what you want while accepting what you don't, here's the point is that, as you said, a lot of people that if they don't get what they want, they're extremely disappointed, right? And so if you can think through the scenario in advance where you go, okay, I'm going to give my best towards the ideal outcome, and simultaneously accept if that outcome doesn't come to pass, and I'm gonna find peace with both outcomes. But I'm not gonna put my energy in. And you said something when you explained this earlier. I forgot the words you used, but essentially your eternal dialogue is where all of this actually the rubber meets the road, right? So you have to. For me, I use affirmations. I script out the ways I need to think, what I need to believe, how I need to behave, in order to put myself in a peak state to create the results and the outcomes that I want in my life. But if you speak with fear, right? Oh my gosh, what if it doesn't happen? What if, I don't know, I'm not on track, right? Then you're creating your reality in a way that is counterproductive to the reality that you ultimately want to create. So you got to be really intentional. This really comes down at a fundamental level to the language that you use. Accept the worst case scenario, journal it, write out your fears, and then in writing, create an affirmation that articulates, I am committed to this outcome, and I'm committed to giving it everything I have every single day, no matter what. There's no other option. I'm going to get right. And that's it. You accept the worst and you expect the best, and you continue to focus on, dwell on, imagine, visualize, pray about, put all your energy into what you want. Once you've accepted what you don't want, you don't have to sit there and live in fear over it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's such a profound distinction here. I heard, it was funny. Someone was on a chat earlier today for another call, and I wrote it down because it's in alignment with what you were saying. High expectations, low attachment. And the low attachment is this idea, like, you're going to accept whatever happens, accept what you can't change, and then put your energy towards the positive. So what you did, and this will tie into authorship, and I can do that in a moment, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to just stick my head in the sand and say, okay, I have cancer. I'm doomed. I give up. Yeah. Nor is it, I don't believe in you. I'm going to get past this. I don't even have to worry about taking care of my family if something happens. You're preparing for, the worst possible scenario, mentally, emotionally, financially, practically, strategically, while at the same time orienting your mind to going, okay, what am I going to focus on? I'm going to focus on what I can do. What I can do moving forward, and maintaining this positive attitude, because you might not change everything that happens, but your best bet, like you're saying, is to go in with a positive attitude, because then your mind's going to start to see possible solutions.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
I hear this, so it comes up with authors, and now we can switch a little bit into authorship considerations, where that comes in with this resistance could be, well, I don't really want to get my hopes up for a book launch. What if it doesn't go well? What if I put all this time and money into launching a book? And they have a lot of fears. And another way I see some authors resist it is they might go, well, let's say it's someone wanting to write a book. And it's just funny with the way this works out in life. Some people will actually be like, I don't have like a story like Hal has. I don't have the overcoming cancer, the near-death experience. Well, my background actually isn't that big of a deal or whatever. So I don't know that I have anything to say. And I would say whatever your background is, there's something from there that's perfect. Maybe the fact that you come from a quote ordinary lifestyle, or maybe someone was raised in a really wealthy family and everything was given to them that they wanted. Maybe that's their story and who they connect with. So yeah, moving into writing the book, we'll get into a little bit of writing and then really want to shift into marketing as well.
Sure.
When it came to writing the book, how did you approach this in the sense of, okay, there's a lot of other personal development books out there. And this is what I dealt with when I first got into writing. Well, what am I going to say that hasn't been said before? What do I really have to contribute that Tony Robbins hasn't said, or Jack Canfield hasn't already said, or, whoever? So what would you say, or how did you approach this from the perspective of owning the fact that you have something meaningful to contribute?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that those insecurities and fears I dealt with daily. Like, there were so many times where I'm like, why am I writing a book about waking up early? Like, I didn't invent morning rituals. I didn't even invent the practices contained within the Miracle Morning, And so there was a lot of fear and insecurity and imposter syndrome around all of that. And not to mention, I don't think I'm that great of a writer, I think actually my talent is I can write in such a simple way that it makes it really easy to implement and effective. But anyway, I think that for anybody, your story is your story. And what people gravitate toward is authenticity. And you literally, let's say you've had a perfect life, right? None of us have, but let's say you had a perfect life. You literally could write about that and how you're insecure to write because you feel like you haven't overcome this adversity or, whatever. Like that angle alone, they're like, dude, he's being authentic, right? Or she's being authentic. Like that's real. And so that's the secret. There's a, or one of the philosophies that I often talk about is give up being perfect for being authentic. And I think that's for an author really crucial, and it's the idea that, people just gravitate towards authenticity. And Robin Sharma said it another way. He said that when you're vulnerable, people fall in love with you. Most of us think we got to be perfect, or we got to have, or perfect on the other side where you have to have this story of dying or, or overcoming this amazing, this crazy stuff. Most of us, we were picked on in school. We were like, connect with their humanity. To me, connect with your reader's humanity. That is the key, and obviously, I'm looking at a shelf of books. Most of the people that wrote those books didn't die in a car accident or get cancer. A few of them did, but it's few. It's very few. It's just really being authentic with your story and pulling out the, and like finding the pieces within it that were challenging and that again, it's relating to humanity. You're a human being. You've had to overcome the same fears, insecurities, challenges, all of those things. And if you can just connect with the humanity in your reader, they're going to feel connected to you.
Exactly. Yeah, I love it. And we each have a story, we have a perspective. And so one of the things that you brought up, and for those who haven't read The Miracle Morning, first of all, get it and get the book, The Miracle Morning, or The Miracle Morning for Writers, or both. And you'll see in there, one of the things you do really well, Hal, is that you take these concepts, these rituals, these ideas that have been out there that you've studied. And what you did is you created a framework and you made it very easy to implement. And I use that word that phrase, easy to implement. And that's so key because people aren't buying just information. There's plenty of information. You can Google endless. There's too much information now, if anything. So people are looking for perspective. They're looking for your story, your way of approaching something. And that's what you do in The Miracle Morning. So right before we get into the marketing side of things, how did you approach creating this framework? Let's say we're talking to a nonfiction author and they go, I have all these ideas in my head. They're kind of out there. Like, how do I take all this and put it into a book?
Yeah. Here's what I recommend. This actually is a marketing strategy and a writing strategy. In fact, this is the way that you engineer your book to market itself. It's behavior change. Most books do not change a reader's behavior. They simply shift the reader's thinking for a very short period of time while they're reading that book. And while you're reading a book, you've been there before where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. My mind is blown. What great ideas. This is, but then when the book ends, typically you don't do anything differently except for start reading a new book. And now that's the best book you ever read. And that's the one that's blowing your mind, right? But the entire Miracle Morning book, and that, I would encourage people to read it just to study how it, like why it's effective, like deconstruct the book as an author and go, well, because, it sold 2 million copies almost via word of mouth. Like, I've done a lot of marketing, but it's just podcasts. I'm not on Oprah. I've never been on, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not reaching millions of people. I'm reaching, 100 people at a time. So what made the book successful is that the entire book culminates into behavior change. The entire thing revolves around giving people a ritual they can do every day that will radically improve their life immediately. And so when they're done reading the book, I've heard people tell me it this way. They go, yeah, I go to bed at, 9 p.m. because I like to get up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever and do the Miracle Morning. And they say, I talk about it all the time because I always leave like dinner parties early, and I leave social functions early, and I'm out of there at 8:30, and they go, why are you leaving so early? And I always tell them, like, I do the Miracle Morning. Oh, you haven't heard of it? Oh, it's this book I read 5 years ago. So if you don't change their behavior, then they're not going to talk about your book after they're done reading it. They're going to talk about the next book they're reading. But if you give them a ritual or routine, which by the way is universal, I don't care what your topic is on. If your topic is on marriage, for example, give a daily ritual that the couple can do every single day, where maybe you make a companion journal, which is a bonus idea, right? I made a journal that sells about 10% of the Miracle Morning books that sell. So every 10 books that sell, people buy a journal, right? And so it's a companion, but the point is you could give it a ritual to the couple, and they could print it off. It could be from your website. It could just be something they do without they don't need your tools at all, but you give them a ritual they do every day where it enhances their relationship. It enhances their marriage. And now they're going to talk about that for the indefinitely. Every time their couple friends are complaining about how, my wife is this, my husband's this, what a pain in the ass they are. Da, da, da. Oh my gosh, have you read, Conscious whatever, right? Like, have you read that book? Dude, we read it 4 years ago, and me and Harry, we still do that ritual every single day or every single week, and it's changed our marriage. So if it's a parenting book, same thing, whatever your book is. And I always tell people too, a shortcut, if you read the Miracle Morning, the 6 practices, which this is another answer to your question, they're organized into an acronym. So the 6 practices of the Miracle Morning are organized into an acronym, SAVERS, SAVERS. Silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And that was my wife's idea, by the way. I was frustrated writing one day, and I go, how am I going to organize these 6 practices? There's no rhyme or reason to them. I don't know how to make them, memorable or flow together. And she goes, why don't you get a thesaurus and see if you could turn them into a 6-letter acronym? I go, that's brilliant, and then they became the SAVERS, which is really appropriate because I think these are the 6 practices that will save you from missing out on your full potential, right? These will enable you to tap into that. But so the acronyms are a really key thing. Have some sort of framework, right? Robert Kiyosaki has the cash flow quadrant. It's memorable. Once you see it in the book, you see it in your mind forever. Stephen Covey has the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? So, having a ritual routine, organizing it in some framework. I like the acronym, and what was the other thing I was saying? So the point is behavior change, right? That is, I believe, the single most important component of a book that goes viral. Now, there are other ways to do it, but that for me has been the most effective for all the reasons that I just shared. And again, whatever your topic is, even if it's a financial book, you can give them some sort of ritual they do every day that takes 5 or 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever that allows them to improve their financial situation. So again, it's universal for whatever the topic is.
This is gold. So I want to highlight a few key things that you just said there. First of all, I'm thinking about it. Kudos to your wife. She has a lot of great insight,
she's my muse. Yeah.
From the title to the framework. So she is on it. And this also, take a step back and look at the importance of outside external feedback. Right? Not everything's going to I have title ideas that are inspired by things that other people say. And this is a key thing that to me it's creating a book is very much a co-creative process. who else can offer you feedback and insight on that? And then when it comes to behavior change, there's a couple keys to behavior change that you bring out. One is you get a person quick results, right? Like it's one thing to read about, it's another thing to do it yourself, witness yourself, do it, experience the results. Now it's like a kinesthetic. I have gone through the process. I'm experiencing the results. It's proven itself. It's not just theory. I'm viscerally feeling it in my cells, the results of this process. And then it can happen relatively quickly. It's not like, wait 3 months before you see the impact. A morning ritual, relationship rituals, these things can happen and get a person results right away. Another key to behavior change is, well, person's got to remember to do it. So how do you make it memorable? Just like you're saying, you have the SAVERS acronym. That's a way that you make it memorable. And so I have my 3 magic words technique. Can I just? And can I just write 1 page a day? I can do more, but can I just find a really simple thing? And that gets people into action. And these little mantras, these acronyms, these things like that, that's what is key that you can offer your perspective on. And like you're saying, how when you put it into a book and it, people see the results and it's easy to share. And I can go tell my friends, oh, the Miracle Morning, brandable term that's associated with you as the author. Oh, it's SAVERS. I can remember that. Silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading and scribing.
Yep, you nailed it.
Yeah. So that's top of my head, right? Yeah. And so that is such a key thing. And then it does tie into the marketing, because now you have a topic that you can talk about. Like you're saying, you're going on podcasts, you're writing articles, people's word of mouth, the readers share it. And so it all syncs together. It's one thing to say, write a great book. I love that you went further in the distinction. What makes a book go viral? It's this behavior change component.
Yeah.
So
one other thing I'll share is you've got to make it really, really easy for people. And the first step in doing that is addressing their psychology as they're reading your book. One of the things I do, it took me 3 years to write The Miracle Morning. I didn't pump it out real quick. It took a long time. I wanted it to be really effective. And one of the things I do is, as I'm writing, and especially as I go back and, I'm kind of editing my own writing, I'm asking myself constantly, what's the reader thinking about after they read that sentence, right? What did that create? Did it create what's the objection? I'm often asking, what's the objection that they're going to have to that? And then I address it, and I address it, and I address it. So in fact, the entire book, and this is something that I would encourage you to model. In fact, every book that we've done in the series, there's a dozen books in the Miracle Morning series, including the one you mentioned, the Miracle Morning for Writers. They end with a 30-day challenge, right? If you're giving somebody, if the whole thing's culminating in behavior change, you got to give them, a structure and a framework to implement it and make it stick as a habit. So it's a 30-day challenge. Well, the preceding chapter to the Miracle Morning 30-day challenge, which is the final chapter, the preceding chapter is all about why we fail to make behavior change, like why we fail to stick to new habits. I talk about New Year's resolutions, right? And I talk about that so people understand what prevents people from making changes. And then it talks about, okay, and here's how you can overcome all of those hurdles so that it can be as simple as humanly possible, right? So those are, I think, just some key components. Don't just tell them what to do. Tell them what to do. Tell them why they're probably not going to do it if they don't do these other things, and then tell them the other things to do.
Yeah, and that's something, if anyone, and I would encourage anyone who's in business, study copywriting, because in copywriting, you're answering objections in advance. As soon as you bring something up and they go, well, I don't believe you, here's a piece of proof. Or but what about X, Y, Z? You're addressing it. And it's almost like you're reading their mind when you do this really effectively, for me, understanding copywriting and psychology applies to writing books applies to copywriting, it all integrates. And so really glad you brought that up. And as you mentioned that you wrote the book, took a few years, you got it out there, and then it was still another year and a half before it really took off. So that's encouraging for someone who goes, I launched my book a week ago. It's still not, it's not a New York Times bestseller yet. Like, it's okay. That might take a little time. Yeah. And then what was your process for getting the word out there about the book?
So I self-published the book on 12/12/12, December 12, 2012, just because I have a bad memory. So I wanted a date I wouldn't forget. But initially when it came out, when a book comes out, right, you leverage every relationship you have to buy it, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, friends, colleagues, right, everybody, So the first month on Amazon, we sold 1,800 copies. Now I did sell 5,000 additional copies via bulk orders I called I just on the phone, used my sales skills. I called all my clients and I basically offered to give, waive my $10,000 speaking fee if they would buy 500 books, so I would just like whatever I could do. So I pre-sold a bunch of books, but in terms of actual sales to the public, that was 1,800 copies, right? That first month. And then the next month it dropped off to like 700 copies. The next month it dropped off to like 383 copies, I think. Next month it dropped off to like 171. So like that's where you see my real platform, right? Like once I exhausted every favor I had, then it dropped way off. Well, what I did to market it, I did everything. I was committed, I was committed. And by the way, I was committed until, this is an important lesson. I always show the graph, by the way, that shows those monthly sales for that year and a half. And I show this when I speak on my book, and I've had other authors come up and they go, man, you kept promoting like every week nonstop for 18 months and beyond. And they go, I only promoted my book for like a month and it didn't do as well as I hoped. So then I got discouraged and I focused on something else. They go, if I would have been as diligent as you, right? So it's like, it wasn't a secret to success. It wasn't like a ninja. I didn't have an advantage except for I believed so much in the Miracle Morning that I committed to change 1 million lives one morning at a time, and as long as that took. And so I was committed for as long. I said, I will commit for the rest of my life because I've seen how this message changes people's lives. And if it'll change 50 lives or 10 lives, it'll change 1 million lives. I just have to get it out to 1 million people, right? And so I do want to share this, very important. But let me share what I did first. So that first year, I started my own podcast so that I would have a way to get my voice out there and kind of build that platform and nurture my current email list, which was only a few thousand people at that time. But I did 52 episodes of my own podcast to try to keep promoting the book and adding value. I was on over 150 other podcasts from other people that year. I gave 36 speeches around the country to, share the message, the Miracle Morning keynote. I was on over a dozen television shows across the country, and I paid to get on the TV shows. I hired some publicists to get me on. And by the way, that didn't move the needle. I'll tell you what moved the needle. So I did and I was on social media. I mean, I was like all in on getting the message out there. And my goal was to sell 1 million books that year. And it wasn't founded on any data. It was just like, hey, I want to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And the arbitrary time frame we all choose is 1 year. So that's what I'll go for. And I want to share this with you because this is so important. That year, I sold 13,000 copies out of 1 million goal. So I was 987,000 copies short, or is that 98.7% shy of my goal? Imagine setting a goal and you fall short by 98.7%, 99% basically. But the only variable, I believe, when you commit to something and you're willing to maintain the faith in yourself that you can do this, and you every day keep putting forth effort to make it happen, and you commit that you're going to do it for as long as it takes, the only variable is timing. The only variable is timing. You'll eventually get there. It just might not happen in a year. It might take you 10. Or for me, I was like, I guess a year was not even realistic. Maybe I could do it in 30 years. I'll give it 30 years. But I tried again year two. And year two, I sold like 20-something thousand copies. And I was still, 95% short of the goal or whatever. And then I ended up, ultimately, it took 6 years. 6 years. I finally reached that goal of 1 million copies sold. And I'll tell you the number one marketing strategy that worked for me, not rocket science, but it was podcasts. And here's why. I thought it'd be morning shows. I'm like, dude, a morning show, it makes so much sense. Miracle Morning, I'm on a morning show, right? And I was on Good Morning Sacramento and Albuquerque, and I was on national TV shows. And here's what I realized. People that watch television, it's often the TV's on. First of all, they're not necessarily those that pursue personal development or any kind of book, self-help books, right? However, if they're listening to a podcast, more than likely by default, especially if it's in your genre, they pursue personal development in that genre. So that is your audience right there. Also, the TV's on, they might be making breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever, right? They're not like in the mode to learn and grow and buy a book. But most likely they're listening to a podcast on one of their devices, right? Their computer, their phone. They're a click away from going and taking action and buying that book that they're hearing. So for me, podcasts have been the single most effective way to sell books, and television, unfortunately. Now that's been good because it gives you credibility. It goes on your website. I think it is good. I wouldn't trade that. I would invest the money again to, I did Clint Arthur's program, Celebrity Launchpad. I thought it was great because, again, it got lots of footage all over of me on these shows talking about the Miracle Morning. But in terms of moving the needle, it was podcasts. And the one thing I didn't do is blogs. And I believe that's arguably even better than podcasts in theory, because they're not listening, they're literally reading, and you can embed the link right into the article, right? So I think that if it were, I were doing it again, I would incorporate just as much energy into blogging or guest blogging as I would into podcasting. But for me, podcasting is what got the book to where it is.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before, and it reminded me of just how powerful podcasts are. Some of the highest quality subscribers and fans come from podcasts. And so I know some authors, and we can wrap this up in a few minutes. You can.
I think I got a few extra minutes if we need to keep going. Let's do it.
So like some authors, first of all, they might have not have any idea what they want to do to market the book, but then they get into it and they go, oh man, there's 10,000 different things I could do to market my book. And what I like about what you're saying is you found a couple effective strategies, primarily podcasts, really, and you went like, that's going to be my thing. Yeah. And it's not, I'll do a podcast here, and then I'll do, this thing here over here. I'll do a book signing here. And you might have done all these different things, but you went on 150 podcasts in that first year, right? So you concentrated your effort. And so if you were to lay out a simple marketing plan, like you said, you could go back and do it again. You could focus on like the 80-20. What's the 20% that moves 80% of the sales, and just have a few steps to your marketing plan? What would that look like?
Yeah, number one is I would form a launch team. And your launch team, that's something, in fact, if you Google the Miracle Morning launch team, I'm thinking you'll probably come across the web page for it. But basically a launch team is a group of people who know you, like you, trust you, right? They're waiting for your book. And they commit to basically, there's two key things. Number one is to share your book when it comes out. Or if you have a little bonus marketing strategy, actually, I would put this as number one. Once you write the first few chapters of your book, first 2 to 3 chapters, put those up on an opt-in page where people can download and don't call it the first 2 chapters, call it a sneak peek. It's a lot sexier than the first 2 chapters. So download a sneak peek now of the, Miracle Morning, and just use something like leadpages.net. If you don't have, that's a really nice plug and play where you can put the book cover up, use an email web form, and you can use like an Aweber, Constant Contact, or MailChimp or whatever. Right. But I'll tell you this, I did that with the Miracle Morning. I actually put up a 60-minute audio interview that someone did with me. And I'm like, hey, can I have the recording from that? And they go, yeah, this was really early on. I think it was before, I was thinking about writing the book, but I didn't even know for sure. And I put that audio up, and that audio, and I guess for the same reason as I gave you about the book, it changes behavior. I taught people, here's how you do the Miracle Morning, like tomorrow, right? And that audio got passed around, and I had over 10,000 opt-ins to that audio, which actually, now that I think about it, so on my email list was about 10,000 people when the book came out, but it was dead. I didn't nurture them for those 3 years. I sucked. I had no podcast. I had nothing. So most of that was dead, but a lot of it still, I'm sure they were waiting for the book, right? They were doing the Miracle Morning even before they read about it, because I taught them how to do it on that audio interview, right? So number one, give away a sneak peek of your book, whether it's the first few chapters, or it is a video, or it is an audio. Give those away and have people opt in for it so that you can start nurturing your email list and building your audience. Then you'll have fans. So while you're writing the book, you've given that away on social media, wherever you can, and you've got a fan base that love the concept, right? They're waiting for the book. Number two, from that fan base, you form a launch team. And a launch team is, again, there's basically 2 responsibilities. Number one, share the free sneak peek if you haven't already. That's number one. Number two, when the book comes out, please share the book. And number three, write a review the week that it comes out on Amazon, right? We all know that. I buy products based on, if there's at least 4 out of 5 stars, ideally 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon, and that's what I'm going to buy. But if you've got no reviews, then, I'm not sure if it's good or not. So that's a key component. It also kicks the algorithms in for Amazon. And then the third piece is podcasting and blogging. And like I said, podcasting was for me the key. And I've done now, I think it's over 400, maybe 350, but I think it's over 400 podcasts now, interviews for other people. And I'm doing it right now, right? I still do this as a way to continue reaching new people, because my goal, by the way, has shifted from 1 million lives to 1 billion lives. And I'm just committed for the rest of my life, however long that takes, because there's nothing I've ever created up until this point, more so than the Miracle Morning, that impacts people's lives in a more profound way. And that's not in my opinion. That's just from receiving thousands of reviews and thousands of emails of how it saved someone's marriage, or it turned their income around, or just all these amazing results. And I'm like, all right, I have a responsibility to get this in the hands of every person on the planet, if possible. So that's what I'm working towards.
Perfect. And so one quick question before we wrap up. So you go on podcast, you're building your email list, so key. You have the sneak peek, then you go on a podcast. Where do you invite people after the podcast? What do you send them to, and how, connect the dots for those who don't understand maybe how the podcast leads to a book sale?
Yeah. So almost always at the end, a podcaster will ask, hey, what's the best way to find you or follow up? Or, half the time they'll say, where can they get your book? That sort of thing. Whatever they ask, and if they don't ask, by the way, you can have it kind of, you can weave it in, right? If someone says, hey, thanks for being on the show, and you go, yeah, one more thing. If anybody wants to get a sneak peek of the Miracle Morning, go to miraclemorning.com right now, and you'll get the first few chapters of the book. You'll get an audio and a video. So whichever format, you can listen to it, you can watch it, you can read it. That's all at miraclemorning.com. And then, if you want to buy the book, of course, it's on Amazon. You can get the audiobook, the Kindle. It's, it's all available there. So if you're ready to buy it, sure, go to Amazon. But otherwise, get a sneak peek, check it out, see if it's a good fit for you. Perfect.
So on that note, where can people find out more about you, Hal?
miraclemorning.com. Miraclemorning.com is the hub. You can join the community there. We have our Facebook group has 260,000 members from over 100 countries, and it's so engaged. It's really a special group of people that are waking up every day, fulfilling their own potential, supporting each other. So miraclemorning.com, you can get that sneak peek. There's a link to buy the books. You can join the community, all the things. And then we have a movie coming out. I don't think it's on the site right now because it's not ready yet, but we have the Miracle Morning movie. The documentary is coming out in October. So we're working on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I want to encourage everyone listening to this, watching this. First of all, pick up the book, The Miracle Morning, or the book, The Miracle Morning for Writers. It's on a personal level, the impact that it can have. You can hear about all the lives that are being impacted, how it's changing their business, their marriage, their relationships, their health. And then also from an author standpoint, I invite everyone to get the book and to go opt in for Hal's work. Also to study what is the process like, how is this book laid out? What can you learn from that? Go check out some of Hal's other interviews, because you're going to learn what you can model from that and go, oh, I see how Hal is building his business. I see how he's going from the podcast to the community, and you'll be able to study that also from the author perspective and learn more that way. Hal, I want to thank you so much. Any final words before I wrap up?
For those of you authors, just know this. I think that for all human beings, and authors are no different, we really want to be in a different place than we are, right? We're always working towards a better future, and that prevents us from living life. Like, life is happening now, and if you're always living perpetually trying to create a better future, with nothing wrong with that, but if that's where you're always at, then when you get to that future, you're never going to enjoy it, because you will have already created a better future that you're working on creating. And so I think that we miss out on our entire lives by not really being present to, hey, life is perfect in this moment. I am grateful for everything that I have. And the last thing I'll say is this: when you finally get to the point in your life whether it's writing a book or starting a business or having a family, whatever it is that you are working towards, what you're working so hard for it. When you finally get there, you'll look back and you almost never wish it would have happened any sooner. You look back and you go, oh, the timing was perfect. I had to go through all of the things I went through to become the person that I needed to be to create the life I want to get to this point. And with that hindsight, take that now and go, okay, I'm going to be at peace with where I am. I'm going to be at peace with where I am. I'm going to enjoy every moment. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be, present to the perfection of today, while I maintain a healthy sense of optimism and urgency to keep taking one step further to create the results I want in my future, but not because I need that to feel good and fulfilled and happy and whole. I'm already that now. I'm just doing it because it's the game I'm playing and it's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hal.
You got it, brother. Thanks, Derek.